Okay, we'll open our council time session for March 6th. We'll start with any amendments to the agenda.
Yes, good afternoon. I am requesting to remove item 7.3 under executive session, and then also on 7.1, reducing that from 10 minutes to 5 minutes.
So by my math, we'll have a 20-minute executive session today. Any objection? All right, we'll go ahead and make those changes, and then we'll begin with public comment on agenda items only, please. Anyone in the audience?
So I'm wanting to speak a bit on the FBI part of the agenda. By a bit of a history,
Could you please state your name for
my
the
name's
record?
Patty Reynolds, sorry.
Thank you.
Beg your pardon. I've lived adjacent to the 3,840 acres that's known as Camp Bonneville. I've been there for 34 years. Obviously, I have memories of it as an active military installation, as well as sitting through a lot of the years of meetings with the DOD, ecology, EPA, et cetera, including many consulting firms, as well as my own fellow citizens as we planned the conveying the property of the county. As pertaining to the agenda, the EPA position has always been that the existing target practice ranges are incompatible with the conservation mandates given in the deed. This is a documented fact. Target practice ranges are a potential fire hazard, also a fact. Also, the usage of recreational vehicles, parking of vehicles with hot undercarriage in the unmaintained grasses, and the dropping of cigarettes in dry brush, certainly also a fire risk. If any of the county staff or the counselors attended the wildfire information session sponsored by the Columbian early last month, you heard our Commissioner of Public Lands, her DNR representative, and the Clark Cowlitz fire chief all refer to Camp Bonneville as no man's land, and stated that there was in fact no true plan of action if a wildfire occurs in the property or extends into the property. It was frankly angering and very frightening that this comment was made so casually and without any notable concern by anybody on the panel. I'm asking that this council show concern and work to develop a plan for fire safety, fire prevention, and fire control in and around Camp Bonneville before it continues forward with any other plans. The citizens of this area deserve your support and your protection. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Teresa Hardy, H-A-R-D-Y. Before I get started, I actually am speaking on 2 agenda items. I don't know if I get 3 minutes for each or I get 3 minutes and 3 minutes. Okay. All right, I'm going to start now. The first one I'm going to speak to is the Camp Bonneville one. In regards to the agenda and the FBI, there are urgent concerns regarding transparency and obstruction to public engagement regarding Camp Bonneville advisory group processes that should be addressed. When you go to the website page, it does tell you that you can attend online or by phone, but you have to actually go into the agenda page before you can even see where the in-person attendance is and where that is located. So hopefully that can be addressed. The other thing is that it says that members of the public may attend meetings but will not be participated. The public cannot participate in the public process of that. There's no public input. That's a concern. Another concern is that there is no audio or video recording of these meetings. We have gone into almost all of the advisory and commission boards, and you can access the audio and video, but you cannot access this. And at the bottom of the actual agenda page, on the agenda page, it says that the meetings will be recorded and available to the public. So that is a major concern, that the only way the public will know what's going on is by minutes, and minutes are not always accurate. So that's the first thing. The second item that I want to address is Heritage Farm. We disagree with staff's plan to move forward with alternate 3, Agra Park, alternate 1, Enhanced Farm, as presented by the steering committee. Alternate 1, Enhanced Farm, as presented by the steering committee, is preferred, and the county should pursue a conservation easement on the property so that it will be forever retained for its mission and purpose. We believe it is a false premise that Heritage Farm had to create a financial sustainability plan. There was an incorrect belief by certain council members that Heritage Farm took several hundreds of thousands of dollars from the general fund, while it only costs $170,000 per year, which is a minimum of the expenditure. Localizing and expanding our emergency food supply is crucial to prepare for the frequency and intensity of severe climate impacts impacting our food systems here and around the world as a result of global heating. And it looks like my time is up. There's some concerns around Camp Bonneville, and there's concerns around Heritage Farm. Thank you.
Any online?
Caller, please go ahead with your comments. One more time, I'm going to send her.
No? Okay. Well, I think that concludes public comments. And I would just, when it was reported to us that Hillary France herself had sat on a panel that said Camp Bonneville's, sorry.
You just got on the call.
Someone just came on?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead. Let's hear from the caller first.
This is Wendy Cleveland. It sounds like the system might be having some problems. Can you guys all hear me now?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. So Wendy Cleveland calling about Camp Bonneville. I also have some concerns about noise with an FBI. I'm not really sure where you're going with the FBI shooting range because it doesn't explain on the agenda. It just says that you're going to be talking about it. Whether it's already there or you're continuing on with it, I would urge you not to have an FBI shooting range there for the noise and disruption to wildlife and neighbors and the potential of fire hazard in that area. You know, there's also, as the county staff member stated in their uninspiring report on Bonneville, there's a herd of elk that live there as well. And I would also add that there are shooting ranges at local police stations already and private shooting areas that they don't have to do it there. I think there's many other places that they could practice shooting. So that's all I've got. Thank you.
Any others? No. Okay, so we were just as concerned about the remark about no man's land as far as firefighting for wildfire in Camp Bonneville, and we did some further research on that. Kathleen, if you could just kind of give your best view of where we're at with our firefighting capability there.
Yeah, so the first part is DNR actually refers to those jurisdictions that don't fall within a fire district's responsibility or other fire agencies. And so that is a term that they use for any of those locations throughout the state of Washington. Therefore, they are the ones that actually respond, and probably with other agencies that are close by. I believe Public Works was also in contact with DNR or reaching out to them as well to just get a little bit more information. And I don't know, Priya, if you have any additional information.
For the record, this is Priya Dhanapal, Public Works Deputy Director. Public Works has a forest stewardship plan, which has an appendix attached to it, which talks about how Clark County Public Works will coordinate with DNR in cases of fires and other wildfire emergencies. So Public Works staff have been in touch with DNR right after the event that we're talking about right now, and we are working with DNR to update that appendix with the most recent contacts from DNR and Public Works. Public Works staff have also offered for the Parks Division staff and emergency management staff to work in coordination with DNR to provide any resources DNR might need and any information they might need to help with wildfire emergency preparedness.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think the term that DNR used is not a term that is, you know, if you don't hear it within context, it's concerning. And so I do understand the public's concern with that.
Just a quick comment, because I attended that forum on wildfire, and just to clarify a little bit, it is startling to hear no man's land, but Hillary Franz did say that, unfortunate term, but that they do respond. So there was an attempt to clarify that on the spot, but whether or not there's an adequate response, I think the heightened concern about wildfire is certainly there.
So thanks for that update, and I hope that alleviates some of the misconception, because people were really using the hyperbole that it's just going to rage, and because of the perhaps ordinance there, firefighters wouldn't go in anyway. All of that's not true. And DNR very actively during the fire season has a crew there, forward position for an immediate attack with a helicopter base. Well-maintained ranges, of which ours is, are not a fire hazard. There's no fire danger from shooting paper targets with properly maintained berms. And so it has not been a problem. We don't anticipate it to be a problem. And if we do consider, and it's not just an FBI range, I mean, it's been actively used by other agencies as well as our own sheriff's department. It hasn't been an issue. Wildlife is well accustomed to at least the artillery range is gone. Now it's just small arms fire. Anyway, I just did want to make those comments. We were equally concerned, but the next step is to make sure we get the fire breaks in that we, at least I thought were in place. We do have a professional forester out there that's keeping it maintained and productive and thinned. So anyway, it is a concern of the county, and the county did look into it. And wildfires can go anywhere. They can jump anywhere there are trees, and for that matter, in urban areas as well. So it is a danger for all of us to be aware of and to address it properly. So without further ado, we'll go to old business.
Move to approve the minutes.
Second.
Thank you. Any corrections, discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. We'll go to new business.
Good afternoon,
And
Council.
that is the shooting range.
Hi, Chair. It's Amber
I'm
Emery,
sorry,
Deputy. Hi, Chair.
Okay, I thought you were here in the room, so I was confused.
I'm online. Sorry. I apologize for not being in the room today. So I'm going to ask
Okay.
Priya and Rocky to come up if they're in the room as well, and we'll touch on, I will start us
Yes.
off with this business item, and then they can add any context that they would choose to do so. So we are here today to get guidance from council and direction on negotiating with the FBI for a current agreement for the shooting range out at Camp Bonneville. Like you stated, Chair, there's multiple agencies that use that shooting range with the FBI, including our jail and the sheriff's office. And this is to give staff direction. Myself, Rocky, Eric, and Deanne Cordes, our contract administrator for the county, to go forward and meet with the FBI to get a current agreement in place. And Eric and Rocky, do you want to add anything that I didn't add? And we'll be available for questions for council.
Thank you, Amber. And Rocky is ready to go. Is Kara Bowerman online? Because I don't see her.
Yes, she is on.
Okay, super.
I am right here.
For the record, Rocky Houston, Parks and Land Division. I don't have anything additional to add. As Amber needs assistance, any questions, or you do, that's why Eric and I are here to help facilitate that.
So I'll begin with the questions because we've seen some constituent requests about the FBI not paying their fair share. And I've had similar discussions with the manager, not specifically about the FBI, but anyone that would be using our range. How is that priced out? I know English Pit, we just went to basically a monthly rental kind of arrangement. So reimbursement is one area I'm curious about, and any past money owing. And what is the arrangement for improvement, maintenance, operations? Will there be any plans to enhance sound barriers, for instance? Those are typically the questions I've been asking over the last half year or so.
And I do want to just state beforehand too, so this is the request to actually start negotiations. So there is no contract yet. And if council today approves, like, yes, we want you to move forward with negotiating, the contract will still come back to council as well for approval. So I just wanted to make that statement before, because we may not have the specific terms yet. This is just getting the direction to, yes, start looking at the terms and negotiating.
Okay, so then my guidance, my perspective is I want to see it well run. I want to see it, make sure that we have a plan in place to clean it up, to improve it, to make sure that there are best practices for sound barriers put in place. I guess so that's my guidance. The other question is that constituents raised was whether or not the land transfers prohibit a range there. I know it specifically allows a police academy. I may have been under misunderstanding that ranges were always allowed because they have been. So I'm concerned about those questions by constituents. And we heard a little bit today too, that it's incompatible with the conservation transfer documents.
So yes, I will talk in regards to previous agreements we've had and kind of what those arrangements are, and Eric will fill in because he knows more of the details than I do, of course. And then from there so I'll start with, before it was transferred, there was a reuse plan created that identified potential layouts and uses. That started, I think, in 95, 96, and it was updated last in 2005. That 2005 version articulates that the new federal laws, USCs, never get the right word right, statutes, that our reuse plan that was adopted is still consistent with that update to that law. In there was public shooting ranges and sort of non-public professional shooting range elements. A shooting range and that use always does create implications on the other uses there, and that's always something that we will have to consider as we move forward, whether we move forward today with a shooting range or in the future for the master plan, because it will have sound or perceptions, behavioral concerns from other potential users. So that's always going to be there and something we're aware of. In the land use document that was utilized for the reuse plan and the consent decree transfer, I believe FBI is referenced 47 times. So the use for the range for FBI was something discussed and identified. It's not a requirement. It's something that was allowed and considered through that process. The current or previous agreement we have, I believe, was about $150,000 a year was what was being paid to us for their use. For sound suppression, for all their long rifles, they utilize suppressors. So for those, we are getting that reduction in sound. For small arms, that is still open, as well as we do have the sheriff's office there. So depending upon who the user there is, the sound could be coming from a variety. The suppression will always be one of those ongoing things. I know they've identified an opportunity to want to expand and do things there to make improvements. We've held them off in regards to, first things first, we have to decide whether we're going to have an agreement, and then what those long-term implications are for any of that development. Eric, anything to add?
For the record, Program Manager, Eric Harrison, Program Manager, Camp Bonneville. Rocky is correct. So the reuse plan states 47 times, the FBI is in there 47 times, and it is within that land use agreement to have a firing range there. I also say that the FBI has been a good tenant, if you will. They're very proactive. They have come to me several times asking that they want to improve the range. They have the funding for that. Again, like Rocky said, we've held off on that because we don't know what the future is for that reuse plan. Hopefully we'll know that in about a year when we start getting analysis work on the cleanup plan and is it working. As far as suppression, their long rifles are all suppressed. They are a small footprint. We're talking, they do have special agents from the field office in Portland come to the facility, but majority of the time it's the SWAT team, the regional SWAT team, the FBI SWAT team that is there, and they're a very small footprint as far as agents are concerned.
Thank you. So I'm going to open it up to the other counselors. So you have my full support. I think it should be improved and solidified and make sure we get appropriately reimbursed for it. Operating hours, that's also a concern of the community. Even our private clubs out there have pretty strict rules that we may not have had in place at Camp Bonneville. Unless it's indoors, you shouldn't have nighttime firing. I know they want to do nighttime firing, but they shouldn't have it unless it's indoors or suppressed. I don't think the sheriff has many suppressed weapons. And then holidays or weekends, Sundays, people do need rest. And so I'm hoping that we do have some enforceable and reasonable hours of operation. Anyway, that's my guidance. Sue?
I have a couple of questions, some of which were answered. How long was the agreement period that expired, I guess, over a year ago? How long was the previous agreement?
I don't have that memorized at this time. It was the FBI. The FBI has been a tenant of that property since the 1980s. I can't recall exactly when that agreement has ended, but for almost 3 years that I've been here, they have always been on that property, using that property.
Right. I'm curious.
We'll get back to you with that.
Okay, because with every opportunity to renegotiate, other conditions can be put in there. So if it's been so long that, probably some of the issues are out of date.
Councilor Marshall, if I can add.
Yes,
sorry,
please.
If I can add to that, so the current agreement ended in 2022, the end of this, so end of that year. Far as I gather, we were doing, I think, 10-year increments, and I would recommend us doing 5 like we did with the 192nd range, so that we can look at what Rocky and Eric said, council's decision on what the use is going to be for Camp Bonneville, so we keep that in more structured increments so that we can make those changes if need be in smaller years. So we'll if we get council's direction today to go forward, we will discuss that with the FBI of making those smaller increments, so we don't have that a 10-year lock in.
Great. And then I'm wondering where this falls within the timeline for, I know there is a committee working on whether or not things are adequately cleaned up, what more may be needed. So that will play out through the remainder of the year, and then, or you can tell me what the timeline is. And then I think it's anticipated that there'll be another committee put together to look at uses, and kind of wondering what that timeline is, and if it is a 5-year increment, how that would fit in there.
Great question. Before I answer that question, I just want to clarify is that the agreement did expire in December of 22, and we've been working to ensure the county's use of that asset with the sheriff's office and jail was figured out before we entered into another agreement. Correct. So there were some operational things for the county that we were trying to ensure were in place before we moved forward. So just to clarify the part of the reason why the gap is there. So the current timeline is we're hoping, and we'll see as we continue to work with the Camp Bonneville Advisory Group, is around 12 months, probably be a few extra months than that to have that review. Through the Department of Ecology process, we are finalizing, and we're hoping to get I guess we call it a draft or 60% sort of cleanup action plan for 2C, which is the landfill number 4, thank you. And then that process will go through hopefully into late 24, early 25. We'll have a recommendation or decision from Ecology on that, so that all of the identified cleanup sites will be completed. In that interim, we have a 5-year review that we'll be conducting, which will review all of our institutional controls and practices and how things are going on all those previously closed out cleanup sites. That process, we believe, takes about a year.
I would say about a year.
And so we got several parallel informations going on. The last thing is, once we get the 2C closed, that will allow us to then start an RFP process to do the site-wide cleanup action plan, which provides those long-term institutional controls and that final closeout of the cleaning or Ecology's role with the site in its current setup. That process will probably take a year to 18 months for us, and then Ecology has their own timeline from there to review it and close it out. So in short, and once we get that, that's when we're wanting to do the master plan, because then we know what the play sheet is, where if we do need additional work, et cetera. So we're not planning for an area or a use that's not going to be compatible. So the 5 years fits squarely in there, where that 5 years, I don't believe we'd be coming out of closing up, buttoning everything up before we'd be looking to determine what that next use is.
Okay, so it might be a full 5 years before a group comes together to talk about uses?
Can I clarify?
Oh, sure.
So we're in the process right now of looking at 2C. We have a contractor who did a feasibility remediation investigation into that site. My timeline for the contractor is around June. We'll have that published. During that time period, public comment will be available from Ecology. Public will be able to comment on the feasibility study that we conducted. On top of that, once that has gone through the process, we were looking at the cleanup action plan for that particular site, and that will be another public comment period for that time period. I would say with Ecology, we're looking at 2025 to get that approved by Ecology after the public comment period. Once we have that approved, we can start to the mitigation, the cap, and we'll have a cap for all the mitigated sites on Camp Bonneville. And then I can start looking at the long-term operations maintenance plan, the site-wide plan that Rocky talked about. Once we have, and that, depending upon public comments, that could be 18 to 2 years before we actually get that approved by ecology. But once we have that approved by ecology, then we can start the master plan.
So 3 to 5 years, well, my fingers are being crossed.
Thank you. It would be good if we could see how this graphically lays out and what is parallel in that general time frame.
For our discussion, though, I think the relevant question there is, you know, if you do have an agreement and you negotiate an agreement with the FBI and they want to put in their grant money or their capital investment, what are they going to be satisfied with? You know, they want to invest hundreds of thousands of dollars into a range they can only use for a year. So I think that'll be the relevant issue. I mean, as far as the roads, parking, the actual range itself, they're all used every day, or almost every day, hopefully not on weekends. And they're all clear. I mean, so they're not dependent on the other issues that you're...
Right. I was just thinking in terms of length of contract and what makes sense. A shooting range may or may not be part of a longer-term operation, and we'll wait to hear from people about all of that. But I would just agree related to operating hours and consideration for the neighbors. The fire hazard, I think, is, and I don't know if the shooting range poses a risk to that or not, but the ability to respond and, you know, have that fire break, all of that, I would agree with all of that. And I think if it is decided in the future that, well, the shooting range isn't compatible, I think being able to provide ample notice to the FBI or others who are using it so that they can find alternative places. Thanks.
Glenn?
Yeah, I share pretty much the same concerns. One of the things that I would like to see is there's been a lot of concern around fire, and I am not a fire professional, and I don't think any of our staff really are, and so I'm hoping that we can get some outside direction, wherever that may be, to really ensure that we're taking all the measures to be responsible in the community in terms of fire risk. So.
And just, I think I've stated it, and I think in this room in previous meetings, but I just want to re-clarify is that we are working with our forester on a fire break around the perimeter. We're meeting later this month to kind of look at some of those proposals. It'll probably be several phases, of course, because it's 18 miles of fence line that this fire break would be. And we're looking at a shaded fire break, which is something the DNR recommends, which means it's removing all the ladder fuels low. It's not removing every tree and having a clear cut for 50 or 60 feet, but it is a significant reduction of fuels along that area to kind of continue to manage it. And so that is the approach we're looking at today. And we continue to work with and update our contacts with DNR, and we are inventorying our fuel apparatus or fire apparatus elements to make sure we can understand what we have and we can make sure we have the right tools there for immediate action to make sure something small doesn't turn into big. But that is something we are concerned about as well and continue to work on improving any and all of the little fire breaks inside.
Okay, so at this point, you're not concerned that we have adequate expertise taking a look at that? Is that?
I believe we have a plan set up, and we continue to work with DNR in regards to those approaches. Okay. Additional work is always better in doing that, but I think we have several things in play that I believe will significantly reduce that barrier between our property and the neighbors and vice versa.
Okay, and I would imagine that communication with DNR is probably the most critical link. Yeah, I don't have any further questions at this time. I do appreciate the other sentiment that's being introduced in terms of really kind of getting a better hold of how the whole process lays out, making sure that we know who's going in and when, having time constrictions and you know, when it should, the activity should occur and what that activity looks like, things like that. So look forward to seeing that contract coming forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. How about Karen? Or Michelle?
Well, I have nothing further than the important points that have already been raised. I think they're great.
I have some comments. Just to make clear, because I'm wondering if I missed something, I was having some VPN issues. So the current contract with the FBI expired December 22.
Correct.
So have they
Yes,
have
ma'am.
they been on a annual, like year to year lease since then? Like how is that working?
No, we've not created an additional document or such. And so if it was a traditional lease, then there would be an automatic, because it's commercial use, that it would extend, those terms would continue on. This is an intergovernmental agreement, so it's a little different. So I think we've been operating in good faith to move forward. Like many things in government, it's taking us longer to get to here, to move to that next step. And so we had drafts prepared in early 23, and our work with our other partners is just taking longer.
Gotcha. That's the part that I missed, the interlocal agreement. So now we want to go to, like, say, a 5-year lease with an option years to extend with special terms and conditions to include limited, like what we were already discussed, limiting shooting during the hours of the evening.
Yes, ma'am. Those are those elements.
All right, thank you. Got it. Thanks. Now I'm on board. Sounds good.
Okay, so do you need thumbs up? I heard some general agreement on a 5-year lease, perhaps with extensions. Obviously, that comes in through your negotiations too, especially if they're going to put capital investment. And I'm hoping the capital investment not only hardens the range, quiets the range, gets to make sure, I mean, I've been out there, I think Glenn's been out there too. There's no flammable material within the range, so it's not really a danger within the range. Obviously, the greater issue is doing the best we can with the fire breaks, working with DNR. I mean, I'm assuming they're going to continue to want to have a forward deployed helicopter base there, fire season after fire season. But do you have what you need? I think
we do,
And you
Chair.
will be seeing in a few months or a few weeks a new DNR staff report for that helipad.
Okay. Amber, did I hear your voice?
You did. I think
No?
we have what we need, and we will go forth and meet with the FBI and start a negotiation.
I just want to quick clarify, was there any counselor who wasn't supportive? I just want to make sure that I think we have 3 right here, but I just want to make sure.
I
And Michelle raised her thumb, and I think, Karen, I didn't see your thumb, but I keep losing the vision.
Yeah, it's whoever is speaking
thumb is
remote
up.
is who shows up in front of you. Yes, so I think, for the thumbs up, we'll need those verbal yeses, so thank you.
Okay, thank you for that presentation, and then we can move on to councilor reports.
Thank you.
I have a report, sir.
Please.
The RTC is the chair plus 2, and all 3 of us were at the meeting last night. And it was probably the meatiest meeting that I've been to in a long time of the RTC. And that's probably because Greg Johnson, the administrator for the Interstate Bridge Replacement Program, gave what I thought was a very lengthy report on the status of everything. And, we could each of the 3 of us go over our own top 20 points. And I think we'd still have another 50 to go that we could give, because there was just so much. But to give you the gist of it, it is talked about by the director of the RTC that this project is becoming real, which I thought was an interesting phrase, because there is money on the table. And that money includes 1.1 billion from Washington, 1.1 billion from Oregon, and now significant grants from the federal government. So far, 2.5 billion, but an estimated 4 billion in total to come. When the Secretary of Transportation, Buttigieg, was out recently to our area, he brought with him an announcement of another including 600 million in federal grant funds for the project. And because in that particular round, that was the highest amount given in the country, there was a feeling that there is good federal support for this project. There are 27 contracts to deliver this whole project, which is an unusually high number. Light rail is a part of the total picture, and there is no doubt in people's minds who are in that leadership group that I mentioned that it is to come. And it will probably have a start of the terminus at the Expo Center in Vancouver and go to a terminus near Evergreen. It's going to be there. Now, exactly how that will be accommodated is an interesting question, because there are 3 different configurations that are being talked about now and have been kind of roughed out in terms of the drawing. There is a double level, a single level, and then one with a movable span, which goes up in the center of the bridge. That would bring it to the Coast Guard requested 178 feet of clearance, which is probably the way that's that demand is probably going to stay the same. I mean, who knows? Time will tell. There will be a draft impact statement that is going to come out that is 9,000 to 10,000 pages. And it will be searchable. So if there's some particular thing that you want to look up, you can search in an index. And then thankfully, for me at least, because I will not be reading those 10,000 pages, there is a 60-page summary. And my last comment on this is that there will be a public comment period that will be 60 days in duration. And that is going to be coming up soon. It's not open right now, but it will be coming up soon. And I would suggest that that public comment period be used prolifically by all who care about this project, because that will be important. I will leave it there, and that's the end of my report.
Thank you for that. It was almost like being there again. Before we leave that subject, though, Michelle, you were there too. Did you want to add anything to the RTC Council report?
That was a really good recap, Karen.
Thank you.
I just wanted to add that I really didn't feel like I got a straight question back from ODOT Greg Johnson when I asked about the Coast Guard in particular approving the height of the bridge span, because he said they had a preliminary clearance, but I've gone back and researched that since then. They haven't approved anything. And I heard actually after the fact and today, this morning, during the IBR steering committee meeting, which was yesterday during our council meeting, that there are concerns by the industrial area, the businesses that are around and underneath the bridge, that now they are not pleased with the clearance issue as well. So Greg mentioned that they would be signing NDAs around the June, July timeframe. So I'm not so sure if that's going to happen in particular. And he said that they're having monthly conversations with the Coast Guard. But those businesses really have to buy into that too, because it's going to affect their business and the river traffic with all those moving pieces and parts. So that's all from me.
Okay, I'll just tag one thought to that last bit that, and it was covered in the Columbian today. And that's something the public is not very mindful of. And a lot of those negotiations happen basically in an executive cloak. So you don't know how much is being spent on businesses upriver or even locally in the industrial areas to compensate them for their lack of business if the bridge is too low. So that is a continuing issue. They haven't quite gotten there yet, although the discussions are ongoing. I'm not going to add anything else to that counselor report. Glenn, you had?
I was just going to say 10,000 pages, 60 days. That's 167 pages a day. We better get reading.
Yeah, an executive summary of 60 pages. That's pretty impressive. Sue?
I had a quick update, which is to thank the Planning Commission and the Planning Department and Chris Cook and Ken Lader, and especially Sonia Weiser for the luncheon that we had last week. It was just splendid. There is the hope that we can do this again. Sonia brought her best, well, I don't know if it is her best china, but some really nice china. And we had gold and silverware to eat with. So it was, the room was transformed, and it was really great for people to have an opportunity in a relaxed setting to share some of their concerns.
Thank you. Any other council reports? Otherwise, we'll go to number 5, work session requests.
There is one work session request today in front of council. It is from Public Works, and they're requesting 30 minutes to talk about Heritage Farm Sustainability Plan. This is a follow-up from the master plan that was adopted by council in 2020, and just to get feedback from council and direction for our next steps.
Well, I'd certainly like to have it, and I don't want to wait another 4 years.
My thumb is up.
I'm all in. Yep. Thank you.
I think that's unanimous then.
I would like to just, while we're on work sessions, check in on some that I believe we agreed to and kind of figure out what the status is. And that was the public benefit rating system, follow up on the fireworks, report back from the sheriff and some of the fire departments, and the voluntary stewardship program. Just as the year is rolling around here, I'd like to know when they might be coming up and if they're on the radar.
Yeah, so we'll get those dates and send them out to you this week. I do know with the fireworks, we're not necessarily getting all the information that council had originally wanted in the follow-up. So what I can do is bring back what we have additionally, just as a council time item, to see if you still want to have a continued discussion on it. But we'll have something prepared, and I'll send out to all the council.
I'm just looking ahead to the next 4th of July, there will be no change from the last 4th of July, and bracing myself for the 200 or so emails that I'll be receiving, and hope that at least that we understand what the impact is and public safety related, so that if there was ever a desire to make some changes, we'd be fully informed.
Jordan, policy updates?
Good afternoon, Council. For the record, Jordan Bogie, Senior Policy Analyst. I've got several items for you today. And so the first one I'd like to bring up is related to this Monday's Battleground City Council meeting. I had the opportunity to listen into that meeting, and they brought up the railroad and the FRDU overlay area. And in general, just to summarize, you know, the council was pretty against the railroad. There was sentiments expressed that they didn't feel like they had been communicated with well. There were fears about, you know, what industries might be coming into the FRDU overlay area. There were questions about, you know, what would the benefits to Battleground specifically be. There were some fears about if there were larger trains coming through town, you know, would that be impacting businesses or traffic and things like that. And so I just wanted to raise the issue for the council, and then look for any direction if you wanted to give it. I know, you know, I would be happy to connect with them, or maybe that's something that we want to do on the staff level or council to council. I just because it sounded like they really didn't feel communicated with, and, you know, I want to make sure as I grow into my role that I'm helping council communicate with our other jurisdictions. So I just wanted to raise that.
Yeah, so, and we talked about it. Number one, thank you for watching that. Otherwise, I don't think we would have heard about it. Two, I mean, the city of Battleground has to realize we haven't done anything since 2017, really, in earnest, and as far as defining uses, allowable uses, what the zone will could potentially have. And just in a general sense, and Battleground was in my district for a while, mostly, there's always a concern that on the fringe of the unincorporated area with the incorporated area, we don't collaborate enough, whether it's roads, infrastructure, you name it. Kind of the planning staffs keep their distance from each other until they need to talk. So I think there's a real gap here that you've identified. We need to talk more. I mean, everything you've mentioned that they discussed at their city council meeting is important to discuss, and they're all relevant concerns. So I'm not sure what the best way to proceed, since we haven't gotten very far along ourselves. But you know, if you get together with your counterpart there, maybe just to kind of give them the lay of the land and where we're at as far as the process. I mean, so I'm answering that yes, you've identified a gap. We need to fill it with better communication. If it means having a meeting, if it's that important to them, to have a meeting between the councils, we could do that as well. I don't know if it amounts to that at this point, but.
Yeah, and thank you, Jordan. I know that you spent time outside of the normal day, but I know the RP process for the consultant, the scoring and evaluation has been done, and they're in negotiations, I believe, right now, and then that contract will be coming back to council. And I think you're kind of alluding to this. It might be a little bit premature because, like you said, we haven't really done anything, but maybe that is the first step. When that contract comes before council, we can provide a summary to the city, just to let them know that, you know, we are moving forward with this review and what the consultant's going to look at, and it'll be under your consideration, and then we can have deliberate check-ins and updates with them throughout that process.
Could we at least do this now, if the other counselors agree, that Jordan reaches out to his counterpart and says, I heard you, I heard the discussion, we're concerned, we're going to take steps in the future once we get a little farther along to work together with them. Is that, Sue, you wanted to add? That's really your district.
Yeah,
now.
it is my district. I meet on a regular basis with the mayors of Ridgefield, Battleground, and La Center, and I attended the Battleground Council meeting last Monday and heard their deliberations and their concerns, and I think it largely was an economic development concern. on their part because they're underway with master planning for the downtown area. They're already challenged with transportation and mobility, difficulty in attracting businesses, and I think fundamentally they couldn't see the upside for the city of Battle Ground with the railroad. And I also think, even though, and I've told a lot of people, what we're looking at right now is just that 400 acres and the freight rail dependent use. That's the most immediate thing that we're going to be dealing with.
So
But
I
there's
think
so
that's
much.
very short-sighted, because it's going to be the whole railroad, maybe CREDC, because they've done some studying for the whole county and how it impacts the different cities.
Well, there are decisions that haven't been made, and I think a lot of uncertainty, and I think some of the communications that are now out there in the public related from the operator have just created a lot of uncertainty and concern.
Are you against communicating with the city?
I communicate with them on a regular basis,
I'm
and I'll
concerned about the
continue to
message you're giving.
Well, I am concerned about your allegation that I might not be conveying accurate information.
Your focus is certainly different. So I think I would pursue, Kathleen, what your plan is, but maybe have Jordan at least reach out and say, I listened, we had the discussion. Once we get a little bit farther down, we want to include them. Yes, please, go ahead.
Chair, I watched the whole thing, and I would definitely have Jordan reach out about something, because they're actively working on a anti-resolution to not support the railroad. I don't know if you caught that part in the video, but they're having Jordan's counterpart develop something to push back, and their mayor specifically, in my opinion, made a comment that the county chair had not communicated with Battle Ground, which I disagree with, but I do think, like what Kathleen mentioned, that consulting company will clear some things up. But yeah, I think that they've been getting some information from different groups that is not the county, which I think is affecting their opinion on the railroad.
Okay, well, thanks for that additional input. That kind of changes my focus a little bit, and I would like to meet with the mayor, so maybe we could arrange that as part of your outreach to your counterpart. I can't remember her name, or even if it's the same city planner, city administrator. So I would ask for that in addition to.
The mayor and their city administrator, Aaron Erdman.
Please, Aaron, that's right.
Yes.
But in addition to that, I liked your suggestion very much, Kathleen, of taking what the consultant is working on and having a broader presentation to that, not presentation, but discussion with them on that. I think that would be very, very nice. And even if it were not quite fully formulated at that time, so that any input that they had could be included in that consultant's effort as well.
Thanks for that. It may be a while before we have something from them, but.
Well, like I said, staff's actively working through that process. And what we could do, I think initially too, we could work with community planning to get a summary of what we actually asked for in the RFP process for that consultant. Because if we wait till the negotiations and let them know, it's really going to be like a week later, it's probably on your agenda. So maybe we can give them a briefing beforehand, just like a outline of stuff. And then as it's coming before council, we'll let them know that as well.
Okay.
I don't know if we can, asking for their input is great. How it's incorporated into what we've put out for the work to do, that might be a challenge, but we can see how we can incorporate it.
So I think that was just point one. You have other policy
Yes,
issues.
I do have a few more. Thank you for that. So the next thing I'd like to go to is related to public defense and some proposed updates that the Washington State Bar Association Board of Governors are considering related to public defense. And so this came up onto my radar just a couple of days ago. The Board of Governors for the Washington State Bar has a meeting tomorrow, actually. And as part of what they're considering at this meeting is changing the structure for public defenders. And so right now, they have, a caseload limit that they have, and there's a proposal right now to change that caseload limit to a credit system that's a little bit complicated, but basically depending on the type of case that the public defender is working on, they are assigned a number of credits, and then there's a cap on the number of credits. There's also some new standards around, increasing staff support for public defenders. And so these requirements would phase in over the next 5 years or so. And the upshot is that, I think there's an understanding that, our legal system is burdened significantly. Our public defenders are burdened. We're trying to, as a system, reduce the stress that they're under, retain qualified employees, things like that. But this would potentially triple our costs. And so we spent about a little north of $7 million last year on public defense. This, with the new requirements, if fully implemented, could increase that up over $20 million. And so it's a pretty significant jump. And so what I've done is I have taken, so WASAC has written a pretty lengthy letter discussing some of the policy considerations. I have just drafted a shorter one-page letter that really just sort of reiterates some of the key points from the WASAC letter, and then also acknowledges the impact to Clark County, and that we could see a tripling of our costs, over $20 million. And so I would, if council approves, I would then send out the letter that is on your screen right now to the Washington State Bar's Board of Governors in advance of their meeting tomorrow, just letting them know that Clark County is concerned about the scope of these changes, not that there aren't systemic changes that are needed to the system. I think, trying to refine and make our legal system better is a goal that we share, but an unfunded mandate increasing county costs hugely is not the best way from our perspective to go about doing that. And so that's what I try to communicate in this letter.
I thought, Jordan, that
So
your letter was terrific, and I would certainly support you sending that before tomorrow's meeting so that it catches them in time, and hopefully they will take it to heart.
I agree. I've read it, and it is a very complicated area. Indigent defense should be state funded. I mean, that should be a message there that they need. No matter how complex they get a credit system, it is caseload limits is a ridiculous concept. And where the state bar should be taking the lead on encouraging or requiring pro bono hours per lawyer within the state. Other states have done that. Encouraging defense. I mean, what happened to the legislature clerk issue for defense and prosecution? Did that pass this session? Do we know what happened to that? I mean, they should be encouraging people to become defense lawyers. They're critical components. Just putting the burden on the individual counties to triple their costs, unfunded mandate as you couch it, it's just completely untenable. So I like your letter. I want to sign it, and I think they're headed the wrong way if they follow. This is following more of what Oregon did that caused their disaster than looking for real solutions. So you have to support.
Gordon, Chair, can I add something to this just for structure for council's knowledge on
Please.
how this process
Go ahead.
works? So the Washington State Bar, the Council on Public Defense is the one that voted this in. Of course, like Jordan said, it goes to the governor board tomorrow for their vote. Then it would have to go to the Supreme Court for them to consider to amend the rules for the standards that are set forth by the Supreme Court for public defense. So I just wanted to let council know this is like the middle step and it still needs to go through its process, but I think Jordan's letter is excellent, and then it definitely shows our position on the burden that this would cause for our county if implemented this way.
Okay, thanks for that additional information. Sue?
Just to be clear, and I haven't read these standards, and they may be very complicated, that we're not really taking a position on the standards themselves, but that we're taking a position on this is seriously going to impact us, and already, we need funding to provide this service that's not adequate right now. So I could go along with the letter, but as long as it's clear that we're not taking a position on those standards, because I don't think that I have enough information to do that. But the fiscal burden is definitely an issue. Yep, go ahead.
We already have, and I was talking to Jordan about this morning, we have standards already in the criminal rules for the Supreme Court for what caseloads public defense can have. But as Jordan's letter says, like, for example, right now you have 150 felonies per year per lawyer that they can have for public defense. This would reduce that to 43. So the amount of lawyers that you will need to carry this caseload is going to triple the cost. So I think Jordan's letter that he capitalized on what Wasack said at the bottom is really talking about the money value attached to the needed attorneys that this will cause for the state, not the standards themselves.
Okay, thank you. Sounds good.
So we have 3 thumbs up. Greg?
Yeah, I would go ahead and agree. Same thing. They can't, I appreciate the work and everything, but they can't keep passing these things down on us when we have these budget restraints to begin with. So I'm supportive.
Michelle, did we hear from you?
I'm supportive as well.
Okay. Thank you. Next item.
Thank you, Council. So the next item I'd like to talk with you today is related a little bit to the conversation at last week's Board of Health meeting around prenatal care and Medicaid reimbursement rates. And so I got a request from Dr. Melnick, who is also part of the Clark County Medical Society. And so he has, so the Clark County Medical Society is writing a letter to the legislature asking them to do more to expand insurance coverage for mothers, for people who are getting prenatal care. And so basically, as part of that, those who are not already eligible for Medicaid can access Medicaid during pregnancy. There's an exception that allows for that. And so part of the problem, though, is that the rate at which Medicaid is reimbursed is much lower than the true cost. And so it's causing friction in the system. It's causing challenges for funding for doctors to be able to provide these services. And so Dr. Melnick would like to sign on to this letter in his role as part of the Clark County Medical Society, but before he did so, wanted to make sure that it was in line with the policy direction of council. So what I would be seeking is 3 thumbs up to say, yes, Dr. Melnick, it's appropriate for you in your role to sign on to this letter from the Clark County Medical Society.
I have a point I'd like to raise. Being pretty familiar with the cost of prenatal care, I believe that what appears to be in the letter is absolutely necessary and justified. However, many times people consider it a right of theirs to have IVF, for example, or some kind of special opportunity to have a child that is really, really costly. Now, is that going to be considered prenatal also? And if it is, I do not think that that should be included in this cost. And it's not addressed as what I could tell as I read the materials. So I just want to make the point that I think that should be specifically excluded.
I'm not sure I understand what you're asking to be excluded. If you could clarify that.
I don't know if you're familiar with the cost of IVF, but many times the artificial insemination and other means of things that are considered to be prenatal by some are in the $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 range. And then if it's not successful, that will occur all over again, twice or three times, or who knows how many, until it's successful. That's the thing that I think should be excluded. For normal prenatal care, yes, for all of that to be included so that the mother's health is cared for as well as the baby.
I agree with you, Counselor Bowerman. I'm familiar with IVF. I have 2 successful IVF children. And that was paid out of pocket by myself. So, and it's usually not covered by health insurances. So I agree. I don't think that should be covered by Medicaid.
I don't believe that IVF is, as you say, really discussed in this letter. I think it's generally about access to insurance. Low income. I think it's mostly anticipating pregnancy in the non-assisted way, and then low income folks who need access to care and who the system really is not reimbursing at a rate to provide enough coverage throughout the system.
So if it's
Here's the
not
problem,
currently
though,
covered by
Jordan.
the system.
Here's the problem, though, Jordan. Many people consider that to be prenatal care. And for that to be assumed to be included would be a problem, in my opinion, as far as the ultimate cost of this program. And so I think that's the reason I think it should be just in a parenthetical sense to be excluded. And then there's no doubt.
And Jordan, you may not know this, but is this about items that are already covered by insurance? Prenatal care already covered by insurance? Because if it's already covered, then the IVF wouldn't apply, and you may not know.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure, but as I read the letter, it's really talking about I think there's sort of a set number of appointments that are typical throughout the process. Some different services in IVF, is not among those, and then basically the Medicaid reimbursement for those rates. And what I'm hearing is generally support for the letter kind of as written, but wanting to make sure that Dr. Melnick is not signing on to anything that would put, IVF as a reimbursable Medicaid expense under this program.
I would go one step beyond that, Jordan, because if he just has that in his mind, that is not enough. I think that parenthetically, that needs to be stated in the letter. There's no problem with doing that if we agree with that perspective.
So then just another process question, because this is a letter coming from that society, not from Clark County. So if they are not supportive of excluding that or putting that language in there, does the council want to do your own separate letter to make sure it's included?
I would like to know whether or not it is a current reimbursable practice, because that, I think I really can't imagine Medicaid reimbursing for that.
I don't believe that it is, but I would have to go back and double check. I'm not.
Yeah, because then the issue is moot.
Is there a time constraint on this?
I am not sure what exactly the time constraint is on this. I think it's going to be coming out relatively soon, but the letter that I received was a draft form, so it's not finalized yet.
So I think you've got our input that we will authorize the letter if it does not include the IVF. If it does, and they don't want to exclude that, and like Sue, I can't imagine Medicaid paying for that. I just don't believe it's a reimbursable expense in any state. But if they don't want to exclude that, that's really their goal, is to have insurance cover that kind of prenatal care. Then perhaps I would welcome doing our own letter, and we'll just do the best we can with the timeline. But it doesn't sound like we have three in favor of just signing on without knowing exactly what they're going to promote with their letter.
I think if we could find the answer out of it, whether or not it's a reimbursable expense, that could clear that up. I'd be supportive of the letter as written.
Yeah, and so that's what I'm trying to convey too. But you don't have the authority of three right now to do it. We'll need to get that question answered. And the plan B is we do our own letter if they are going to intend to try to get coverage for it.
So if we get confirmation that it is only for those items that are currently covered by insurance and that this piece that we're talking about is not covered, do we have three counselors supportive to sign on to the letter?
Okay. You've
Yes.
got my support, you've got Sue's support.
Yes.
Anyone else?
Yes, if we can find that out.
Okay. And then, so I heard three support on there. If it is not, are you supportive of doing the same letter but adding that exclusion on behalf of the council?
Absolutely.
Just in case there's a timeline before next Wednesday. Okay.
So just for this particular thing, I would not give recommendation either way. Somehow I missed this, and it kind of brings up a question too. That this wasn't attached to the agenda. That's probably why I didn't see this. So is there a way that we can post documents like this on the agenda so that it's part of the record? And I mean, people could potentially comment on something like this as well.
Yes. So with this and the other letter, sometimes I get these things kind of ad hoc, and I do email them out to the full council, but I understand you guys get a ton of emails. So I'll do my best to get them to Rebecca and Kristen and Michelle and try to get them.
Sure.
During legislative sessions, we're very quick, which is why sometimes we get a letter this morning and he's bringing it up during policy. That's why it's not on the agenda and just under policy updates. Normally, yes, we would put letters out there.
Okay, so that was a complicated one, but are we?
So just to clarify, then I have three. If it excludes it in the insurance, we got three okay signing on. If it doesn't, same letter, but including that exclusion. We're good. Okay, I got it. Thank you.
Next.
And then just one final item that I wanted to bring to the council's attention, which is that there is a legislative review event that is being put on by the Greater Vancouver Chamber of Commerce. I believe that is on the 20th of this month. And I know last time at the preview session, Gordon Thomas Honeywell, who employs our lobbyists, they had a table there. They don't have a table at this one. They're not a sponsor of this event, as I understand it. And so it looks like tickets are $45 a seat for that event, but just wanted to bring it up to council's attention. And thank you to Councilor Belcott for raising this with me as well.
Any questions on that?
Does any counselor want to attend so that we can sign you up?
Yeah, as long as there's no conflicts, I would be interested.
So I have Councilor Marshall, Councilor Young, Councilor Belcott. Anybody else? No. Okay. Thank you.
So I think that concludes the policy update.
It does indeed.
So we have about 20 minutes of executive session, potential after action. The first question I have is, does anyone need a brief break before we announce the return time?
I do.
Okay. Let's take a brief break, and we'll take a brief break, and then we'll go right into executive session. We intend to return at 10 minutes before 3. We have 7.1, which is pending litigation, RCW 4230.110, paren 1, paren little I, for 5 minutes, possible after action. 7.2, RCW, same RCW, for 15 minutes, no action anticipated. We already deleted 7.3, collective bargaining today. So go ahead and take a break, and then we'll go right into executive session as soon as you're done.
Hello there. Chair Medviji has asked us to announce that the executive session is going to be extended for an additional 5 minutes, and we should be back by 2:55. Thank you. Hello again. Chair Medviji has asked us to announce that the executive session is going to be extended again for an additional 5 minutes, and open session will reconvene at 3 o'clock. Thank you.
We have a quorum, and I think we have the other counselors signing in. We conducted the executive session with our lawyer present, and we do have some potential action. But we do have a quorum, so we can move forward.
Yes, Chair, I'd like to make a motion to grant Hagan's request for the county to provide a defense and indemnification in the lawsuit entitled The Estate of Jesse Booth et al. v. Clark County et al. Pursuant to Clark County Code 2.97.025.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second that.
Okay, any further? I'm sorry, who was that? I don't see a vision. Michelle, that was you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it was.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. We are adjourned.